Imagine you possess the net worth of Elon Musk. Now double it. Actually no, let's go ahead and triple it. You're standing on a balcony made of ivory overlaid with the purest gold, overlooking a kingdom where silver is considered as common as stones in the street. It's worthless to you because you have that much gold. The year is 950 BC. You aren't just a king, you are the world's first trillionaire. We are talking about King Solomon. History calls him the wisest man who ever lived, but modern finance calls him the greatest venture capitalist of the ancient world. While most people read his proverbs for spiritual comfort, the top 1% read them for financial blueprints. He understood inflation, diversified asset allocation, supply chain management, and compound interest 3,000 years before Wall Street was even a dirt path. Today, we are tearing down the veil of history. We aren't giving you Sunday school lessons. We are decoding the 15 money secrets hidden in the ancient texts that built an empire of unimaginable scale. These are the secrets that keep the rich rich and the poor, well, watching from the sidelines. If you want to build a dynasty that outlives you, you need to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like a king. Buckle up, we're going back to Jerusalem. On the protocol of radical diversification, the rule of 7. Let's start with a scenario that might feel a little too familiar. You finally save up a decent chunk of change. You hear about this one guaranteed investment. Maybe it's a tech stock, maybe it's a new crypto coin with a dog on it, or maybe it's your cousin's revolutionary car wash franchise. You go all in. You push all your chips to the center of the table because you want to get rich fast. And then, the market corrects. The coin crashes. The car wash floods. You are back to zero, eating instant noodles and wondering where God went. King Solomon knew this pain, and he wrote the antidote in Ecclesiastes 11:2. Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen on earth. This isn't just spiritual advice. This is the original modern portfolio theory, predating Harry Markowitz's Nobel Prize-winning economic theory by about 3,000 years. Solomon calls it the protocol of radical diversification. Most people think diversification means buying a Samsung phone and an iPhone. Solomon understood that true wealth preservation requires spreading your risk across entirely different asset classes that do not correlate with one another. If you look at the historical records of Solomon's administration, he didn't just rely on taxation, which is the lazy king's way of making money. He was an active investor. Let's break down the Solomon portfolio. First, he had real estate and infrastructure. He built store cities like Hazor, Megiddo, and Giza. These weren't just vanity projects. They were strategic logistics hubs located on the major trade highways of the ancient world, the Via Maris and the King's Highway. He essentially owned the toll booths on the ancient equivalent of the I-95. Every caravan passing from Egypt to Mesopotamia had to pay Solomon. That is passive income generated by physical assets. Second, he had international shipping and logistics. Burnt Kings 10:22 tells us, "For the king had a fleet of ships of Tarshish at sea with the fleet of Hiram." Once every 3 years, the fleet of ships of Tarshish used to come bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. Note the timeline, once every 3 years. Solomon played the long game. He invested in high-risk, high-reward maritime trade ventures that took years to mature but paid out massive dividends. He partnered with the Phoenicians, the fleet of Hiram, leveraging their nautical expertise while he provided the capital and the ports. That is a joint venture. Third, he dominated commodities trading. Solomon controlled the copper mines in the Araba Valley, modern-day Timnah. He cornered the market on bronze production. He also operated a massive horse and chariot trading monopoly. He would import horses from Egypt and chariots from Cilicia, package them together, and sell them to the Hittite and Aramean kings at a markup, 1 Kings 10:28-29. That is retail arbitrage and value-added distribution. Why 7 or 8? Why that specific number? Solomon knew that disaster may happen on Earth. In financial terms, we call these black swan events. A war breaks out, your trade routes are blocked, a drought hits, your agricultural tax revenue dries up, a storm sinks your fleet, your gold is at the bottom of the ocean. If Solomon had only invested in sheep, a single disease could have bankrupted the kingdom. By having 7 or 8 streams, taxation, tolls, copper, horses, maritime trade, agriculture, and foreign tribute, he ensured that if one stream dried up, the others would overflow. Here is the brutal truth that keeps most people poor. You are relying on one income stream. You have a job, That's it. You're trading your time for money, and you are one corporate restructuring or one bad manager away from financial ruin. That is a position of extreme fragility. Solomon's secret is that stability creates the psychological safety needed to take risks. Because he knew his basic expenses were covered by the copper mines and the tolls, he could afford to send ships away for 3 years to hunt for gold and ivory. If the ships sank, he was still rich. If they returned, he became the richest man on earth. The application: you need to audit your life right now. Do you have a rule of 7? 1. Earned income, your 9 to 5 or main business. 2. Interest income, high yield savings or bonds. 3. Dividend income, stocks that pay you to own them. 4. Capital gains, assets that appreciate, growth stocks, real estate. 5. Rental income, real estate or renting out equipment. 6. Royalty, IP income, books, courses, music or patents. 7. Business profits, a side hustle or enterprise you own but don't run daily. If you're looking at this list and you only have number 1, you are walking a tightrope without a safety net. Now I can hear the comments already. But WealthOga, I don't have the capital to buy copper mines or ships. You're missing the point. In the digital age, the barrier to entry for these streams is effectively zero. You can build a digital product, royalty, buy a fractional share of a REIT, real estate, and start a service business, earned income, all in the same weekend. Solomon's warning is stark. He says, you know not what disaster may happen. He isn't being a pessimist, he's being a realist. The economy will crash again, inflation will spike again, a pandemic will happen again. The person with 1 income stream panics and sells at the bottom. The person with 7 streams buys up the assets of the panicked person for pennies on the dollar. This is how the rich get richer during recessions. They are diversified enough to survive the shock and liquid enough to buy the dip. Solomon didn't predict the future, he prepared for every version of it. So before we move on to the next secret, ask yourself, if you lost your job today, how long could you survive? If the answer scares you, you are ignoring the wisdom of the wisest man to ever live. And speaking of survival, if you want to survive the YouTube algorithm, you need to smash that subscribe button. We are decoding 14 more of these secrets, and trust me, number 4 is going to make you rethink your entire relationship with debt. Let's go deeper. 2. The king's competence hierarchy, the speed of skill. Let's have a brutally honest conversation about your career. There is a lie that has been fed to you since kindergarten. It's the participation trophy philosophy. It says that if you just show up, do your best and have a good attitude, the money will follow. It says that hard work is the key to success. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but King Solomon would tell you that is absolute garbage. If hard work were the only requirement for wealth, the donkey pulling the plough would be the richest animal on the farm. But the donkey isn't rich. The donkey is exhausted. The donkey is a slave to the plough. Solomon identifies the actual metric for wealth accumulation in Proverbs 22:29. Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings, he will not stand before obscure men. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, do you see a man who is passionate? He didn't say, do you see a man who has a degree? He said skillful. The Hebrew word used here is mahir. It's a fascinating word because it doesn't just mean good at what you do. It implies speed, promptness, and readiness. It describes someone who is so fluid, so masterful, and so technically proficient that they make the difficult look easy and the impossible look routine. Solomon is establishing what I call the competence hierarchy. This is the ancient separation between the 1% and the 99%. Let's unpack the second half of that verse first. He will not stand before obscure men. Who are obscure men? In the ancient context, these were the commoners, the middle managers, the low-level bureaucrats, the people who had no power, no influence, and no money. Most of you are broke because you are selling your services to obscure men. You're fighting for scraps in the race to the bottom economy. Think about Fiverr or Upwork. If you go on there and offer logo design, you're competing with 50,000 other people willing to do it for $5. You are standing before obscure men. The clients there have no budget, they complain the most, and they treat you like a commodity. Solomon refused to operate at this level. When Solomon decided to build the temple, the most expensive construction project in human history, he didn't put up a help wanted sign in the local village. He went straight to the top. He contacted King Hiram of Tyre to get the Sidonians, who were the world's best timber cutters. For the metalwork, he found a man named Hiram Abi. Not the king, a different Hiram, a master craftsman in bronze. 1 Kings 7:14 describes this guy. He was filled with wisdom and understanding and skill to do any work in bronze. Solomon didn't care about this guy's personality. He didn't care about his work-life balance. He cared that when Hiram poured molten bronze, it came out perfect every single time. Because Hiram was the best in the world, he didn't work for local merchants. He worked for the richest king on earth. Here is the economic principle Solomon is teaching. Your income is directly correlated to the difficulty of the problem you solve and the scarcity of the people who can solve it. We live in a world of generalists. Everyone is a social media manager or a consultant or a coach. The market is flooded with mediocrity. Because supply is high and skill is average, wages are low. But the moment you become mahir, truly elite, the supply drops to near zero. Imagine you are a neurosurgeon. If I have a brain tumor, I don't care if you're nice. I don't care if you recycle. I don't care if you charge $50,000 an hour. I only care about one thing. Can you get the tumor out without killing me? If the answer is yes, and you are one of only 5 people in the world who can do it, you can name your price. You're standing before kings. Solomon knew that competence is the only currency that matters in the high courts. Let's go back to that word mahir, speed. In the modern economy, speed is a wealth multiplier. We aren't talking about rushing and making mistakes. We are talking about the velocity of implementation. How fast can you spot a trend and capitalize on it? How fast can you deploy code? How fast can you close the deal? Poor people procrastinate because they are afraid of making mistakes. Wealthy people execute because they know that money loves speed. Solomon's administration was a machine of efficiency. Read the accounts of the Queen of Sheba in 1 Kings 10. She travelled 1,200 miles because she heard the rumours, but what actually blew her mind? It wasn't just the gold. Verse 5 says she was breathless when she saw the food of his table, the seating of his officials and the attendance of his servants, their clothing, his cupbearers. She was impressed by the operational excellence, the systems, the discipline, the skill of the staff. It was so high level, so precise, that she literally gave him 120 talents of gold, approximately $250 million today, just as a tip for being awesome. You need to stop asking, how can I make more money? And start asking, how can I become so good they can't ignore me? This brings us to a concept called Price's Law. It states that in any organization, 50% of the work is done by the square root of the total number of employees. If you have 10 employees, 3 of them do half the work. If you have 100 employees, 10 of them do half the work. If you have 10,000 employees, 100 of them do half the work. Solomon only wanted those 100 people. If you are constantly worried about layoffs, or AI taking your job, or your boss firing you, it's likely because you are not mahir. You are replaceable. You are a commodity. To escape the obscure men, you must specialize. You need to go into the cave and practice your craft until your fingers bleed, until you know more about your specific niche than anyone else in the room. Don't just be a realtor, be the expert in commercial zoning laws for historic districts. Don't just be a coder, be the specialist in legacy banking systems migration. When you are that specific and that good, you don't apply for jobs. Headhunters find you. Kings send for you. But wait, being skillful is only half the battle. Once you have the skill, you have to sell it. And this is where Solomon drops one of the darkest, most cynical pieces of negotiation advice ever written. He knew that people, even kings, would try to rip you off by insulting your work. He called it the "it is naught" strategy, and if you don't understand it, you're leaving millions on the table. We're going to cover that in point number 8. But first, we need to talk about who is sitting at your table right now. Because even if you are the most skillful person on earth, if you are sitting alone, you are already dead. This leads us to secret number 3. Hey, quick pause. Be honest in the comments right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how skillful are you really at your main income source? Are you a 9, the king calls you, or a 3, you're hoping no one notices you? Drop your number below. No judgment, just a reality check. And while you're down there, click subscribe so you can move that number up. Now, let's talk about why being a lone wolf is a one-way ticket to poverty. 3. The mastermind necessity. The death of the lone wolf. We need to kill a myth right now. It's the myth of the self-made man. You see this all over the internet. The Sigma male grind set. The idea that you need to lock yourself in a room, trust no one, build in silence, and emerge as a billionaire. It sounds cool. It looks great in a TikTok edit with funk music playing in the background. But in the real world of high finance, that is a suicide mission. King Solomon, the man who actually was a billionaire, tells us that isolation is the playground of fools. In Proverbs 15-22, he drops a tactical nuke on the lone wolf mentality. Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors they succeed. Notice the binary outcome here. It's not without counsel, plans are harder. It's plans fail. Period. End of story. Solomon understood a psychological flaw in the human brain that behavioral economists today call confirmation bias. When you come up with a brilliant business idea, say selling luxury socks for cats, your brain immediately falls in love with it. You start looking for reasons why it will work. You ignore the data that says it won't. You are trapped in an echo chamber of one. You need an external hard drive. You need processing power outside of your own skull to vet your ideas. The cabinet of the trillionaire. Let's look at Solomon's org chart. You might think that because God gave Solomon wisdom surpassing understanding, he didn't need help. You'd be wrong. The proof of his wisdom was that he surrounded himself with absolute killers in their respective fields. Open 1 Kings 4. It reads like the masthead of a Fortune 500 company. Solomon didn't run his empire alone. He built a cabinet. Azariah, the chief of staff CEO, he managed the priesthood and the spiritual direction of the nation. Jehoshaphat, the recorder CIO, this was his chief information officer. He maintained the records, the history, and the data. He ensured Solomon made decisions based on facts, not feelings. Benaiah, the enforcer CSO, the chief of security. This guy was a warrior. He handled the dirty work so Solomon could focus on strategy. Adoniram, the VP of Human Resources. He was in charge of forced labor. Okay, harsh by modern standards, but in 950 BC, managing a workforce of 30,000 men required a brutal logistical genius. Solomon delegated entire sectors of his economy to these men. He understood that scalability requires systems, and systems require people. You cannot scale if you are the bottleneck, if you are the CEO, the janitor, the marketing department, and the accountant of your business. You don't have a business. You have a job that you can never quit. But the most powerful lesson on the mastermind necessity doesn't actually come from Solomon's success. It comes from the destruction of his empire immediately after he died. This is a warning for every person watching this video who thinks they know better than their mentors. When Solomon died, his son Rehoboam took the throne. He inherited the infrastructure, the gold, the armies, and the trade routes. He was set up for life. The people came to him and asked for a tax cut. They said, "Your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the hard service, and we will serve you." 1 Kings 12:4. Rehoboam had a choice. First, he consulted the old men, Solomon's mastermind group, the guys who had built the empire. They told him, "Serve the people today, answer them gently, and they will be your servants forever." This is customer service 101. But Rehoboam didn't like that answer. It wasn't alpha enough for him. So he consulted the young men, his drinking buddies, the rich kids he grew up with, the yes men. They told him to flex. They said, "Tell them, my little finger is thicker than my father's loins. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions." Rehoboam listened to the young men. He ignored the wisdom of the mastermind. The result? The kingdom split in half instantly. 10 tribes revolted. The GDP collapsed. The golden age of Israel ended not because of a war or a famine, but because one arrogant young man listened to the wrong advice. He lost 80% of his inheritance in 72 hours. Application: who is at your table? This brings us to the concept popularized by Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, the mastermind group. Hill interviewed the richest men in America, Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller, and found they all had a group of peers they met with regularly to stress test their ideas. Solomon predated Hill by 3 millennia. Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Note the material. Iron sharpens iron. Marshmallows do not sharpen iron. If you are the smartest person in your friend group, you're in the wrong room. You are stagnating. You need friction. You need people who are harder, sharper, and more successful than you to grind against your rough edges. Here is the WealthOga audit for your life. The mentor, the pull. Someone 10-20 years ahead of you who's already done what you want to do. You don't ask them, "What should I do?" You ask them, "What mistakes should I avoid?" You're paying for their scars so you don't have to bleed. The peer, the Barnabas, someone at your level who is running the race with you. You share tactics, you compete, you keep each other accountable. This is your workout partner. The protege, the Timothy, someone you are teaching. Paradoxically, teaching reinforces what you know. You can't truly master a financial concept until you can explain it to someone else. Most of you don't have a mastermind. You have friends who you complain about your boss with. You have people who validate your victimhood. Yeah man, the economy sucks, it's not your fault. Those people are draining your bank account. Solomon warns in Proverbs 13:20, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." It's financial osmosis. If you hang around 5 broke people, you will be the 6th. If you hang around 5 millionaires, you will be the 6th. One final point on this. Many of you are afraid to seek counsel because you think someone will steal your idea. I can't tell anyone about my app idea. I need them to sign an NDA first. Let me be the one to tell you your idea is worthless. Execution is everything. Investors and high-level mentors hear 100 ideas before breakfast. They don't want to steal your idea. They're too busy running their own empires. By hiding your plans, you are protecting them from theft, but you're also protecting them from improvement. You're starving your plan of the oxygen it needs to grow. Solomon says, "In the multitude of counselors there is safety." Safety from what? Safety from your own stupidity. Safety from your own blind spots. This week I want you to identify 3 people who are financially where you want to be. Reach out to them. Don't ask to pick their brain. That implies you want to take something for free. Offer value. Buy them lunch. Offer to work for free. Get in the room. Because if you stay in your room alone, you will stay broke alone. Now, let's assume you have your income streams, secret Nia 1, you have your skills, secret Nia 2, and you have your advisors, secret Nia 3. You're making money. But there is a trap door, a trap so subtle that even high-income earners fall into it and become slaves. It's the one thing Solomon warned about that modern society celebrates as a status symbol. We're talking about debt. And what I'm about to tell you in Secret Nia 4 will make you want to cut up your credit cards immediately. 4. The slavery of consumer leverage, the borrower's servant. Let's play a game called Who Owns You? You wake up at 6 a.m. You drive a car that costs $40,000, but you only put $2,000 down. You live in a house that the bank owns 80% of. You swipe a credit card for a $7 latte because you don't have the cash in your checking account until Friday. You go to a job you hate, to pay for things you don't have time to use, to impress people who don't care about you. In the modern world, we call this the American dream. In King Solomon's world, he had a different name for it: slavery. Proverbs 22:7 contains the most terrifying financial equation in history. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Notice that Solomon does not say the borrower is inconvenienced by the lender. He doesn't say the borrower is a valued customer of the lender. He uses the Hebrew word abed. It means servant, bondsman, slave. When you borrow money for consumption, you're not buying a product. You're selling your future. You're taking hours of your life that you haven't even lived yet. Monday mornings in 2028, Wednesday afternoons in 2030, and you are selling them to Visa, MasterCard, and Ford Motor Credit to buy a depreciating hunk of metal today. You have voluntarily entered into indentured servitude. Solomon understood this dynamic better than anyone because he was on the other side of the equation. He was the ultimate creditor. In Deuteronomy 15:6, God promised Israel, "You shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. You shall rule over many nations, but they shall not rule over you." Solomon lived this reality. Kings from around the world came to him for gold, for resources, for military aid. And because they needed his capital, he owned them. He dictated the terms. He set the trade routes. He controlled the geopolitics of the Middle East because he held the purse strings. In our modern society, we have been brainwashed to believe that credit is king. We are told that having a high credit score is the ultimate badge of financial honor. But think about what a credit score actually measures. It doesn't measure your wealth. It doesn't measure your assets. It measures how good you are at being a profitable slave. A FICO score of 800 just means you're a very reliable sheep. You borrow, you pay interest, and you come back for more. The bank loves you because you are their annuity. Solomon knew the power of compounding. We often hear Einstein called it the 8th wonder of the world, But Solomon knew that compounding works in two directions. When you invest, your money works for you. You are the master. When you borrow, you work for your money and the bank's money. You are the slave. Let's look at a real-world Solomon analysis of a standard car loan. You buy a car for $30,000 at 7% interest for 72 months. Your payment is roughly $511 a month. By the end of the loan, you have paid nearly $7,000 in interest. You worked hundreds of hours just to pay the rent on the money. But the tragedy isn't the $7,000 you lost, it's the opportunity cost. If you had taken that same $511 a month and invested it in the S&P 500 towns, averaging 10%, instead of paying a car note in 40 years, that money would not be a used car. It would be $3.1 million. That is the cost of your slavery. You traded a multi-million-dollar dynasty for the smell of new leather in a Toyota Camry. There is a tragic story in 1 Kings 14 that perfectly illustrates the decline from ownership to debt. King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold and 300 shields of beaten gold. These hung in the house of the forest of Lebanon. They represented pure liquid asset value. They were owned, paid for, the glory of the kingdom. A few years later, under his son Rehoboam, the guy who ignored the mastermind, remember, the king of Egypt attacked and took the gold shields. Rehoboam couldn't afford to replace them with gold. So what did he do? 1 Kings 14:27. So King Rehoboam made shields of bronze to replace them. This is the perfect metaphor for the modern middle class. Gold is real wealth. It is ownership. Bronze is the appearance of wealth. It looks shiny when you polish it, but it's cheap, it tarnishes, and it's worth a fraction of the real thing. We live in a bronze shield society. We lease luxury cars, bronze, to look like we are rich, gold. We use Afterpay for designer clothes, bronze, to look like we have cash, gold. We take out massive student loans for degrees, bronze, that we hope will earn us money, gold. Solomon would look at your bronze shield life, your leased BMW, your mortgaged McMansion, your maxed out Amex Platinum, and he wouldn't be impressed. He would see a servant dressed in king's robes. So, does this mean all debt is sin? No, but Solomon warns that it is dangerous. If you use debt, it must be like fire, a controlled tool, not a wildfire. Consumer debt. Buying clothes, vacations, cars, or food on credit. This is idiocy. It is financial suicide. Stop it immediately. Business leverage. Solomon partnered with Hiram. He used resources to build infrastructure that produced revenue. If you borrow to buy an asset that pays the debt and puts profit in your pocket, like a rental property, you're using the bank's money to buy your freedom. That is different. But for 99% of people watching this, you aren't sophisticated enough to handle the fire yet. You're burning your house down. You need to declare a jubilee. In ancient Israel, the jubilee was a year where debts were forgiven and slaves were set free. You can't wait for the government to give you a jubilee. You have to create your own. 1. Stop the bleeding, cut the cards, today. 2. The snowball. Attack the smallest debt with the ferocity of Benaiah, Solomon's hitman. Kill it, then move to the next. 3. Buy freedom. Every dollar of principal you pay off is a link in the chain snapping. Solomon said, "The rich rule over the poor." You have a choice. You can be the ruler or you can be the ruled. You can be the lender or the borrower. You can be the head or the tail. The bank doesn't care which one you choose because they win either way. But your children, they care. Because you're either leaving them an inheritance or you're leaving them a bill. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, brother, I'll pay off my debt. I'll save my money. I'll hoard every penny like a dragon sitting on gold. Warning, that is exactly how you stay poor. It sounds contradictory, but Solomon's next secret flips the script entirely. He claims that the only way to truly multiply your money is to give it away aggressively. It's the paradox of aggressive generosity, and it defies every law of logic, except the one that actually works. 5. The paradox of aggressive generosity, the river versus the reservoir. This next secret is going to make every logical bone in your body ache. It goes against your survival instincts. It goes against everything you learned in Accounting 101. If I tell you that to get more, you have to give away what you have. You're going to look at me like I'm crazy. You're going to say, WealthOga, math is math. If I have $100 and I give away $10, I have $90. I am poorer. And in the world of linear mathematics, you are right. But in the world of exponential wealth dynamics, you are dead wrong. King Solomon, the man who had more gold than he could count, understood a metaphysical law of money that most people miss. He wrote in Proverbs 11:24, "One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want." Read that again. Only suffers want. Solomon is saying that hoarding is the fastest path to poverty. The physics of finance, current and currency. Let's look at the linguistics for a second. The word currency comes from the Latin word currere, which means to run or to flow. It shares the same root as the word current, like a river or electricity. Money is energy. It is designed to move. It is designed to flow from one hand to another, creating value as it passes. When money flows, it is a river. It brings life, it irrigates the fields, it powers the turbines. When money stops flowing, it becomes a reservoir. And if a reservoir has no outlet, it becomes stagnant. It becomes toxic. Look at the geography of Israel. There are two major bodies of water fed by the Jordan River. One, the Sea of Galilee. It takes water in from the north and gives water out to the south. It is teeming with fish. It is alive. It is vibrant. 2. The Dead Sea. It is located further south. It takes water in, but it has no outlet. It keeps every drop it gets, and the result? It is dead. No fish can survive there. It is so salty and mineral heavy that it is toxic to life. Solomon is warning you, do not become a Dead Sea financier, the Solomon scale of giving. You might think, okay, I'll drop $1 in the Salvation Army bucket, I'm generous. That's cute. But let's look at how Solomon defined generosity. In 1 Kings 8:63, specifically during the dedication of the temple, we get the receipts for Solomon's offering. He didn't just give a reasonable amount, he offered 22,000 oxen, 120,000 sheep. Let's do the math on that. In modern commodity prices, a cow is roughly $2,500, $2,000. A sheep is maybe $300. Solomon dropped the equivalent of $80 million in a single religious festival. He literally flooded Jerusalem with meat. It was the biggest barbecue in the history of mankind. He fed the entire nation. Why? Was he showing off? No. He was priming the pump. He was declaring to the universe, to God, and to his people that he operated from a place of infinite abundance. The psychology of scarcity versus abundance. Here is the psychological mechanism at play. When you hoard money, when you reuse paper plates, when you tip 5%, when you refuse to invest in your business because it costs too much, you're sending a signal to your brain. The signal is, there isn't enough, I am in danger, I might run out. Your brain, which is a survival machine, hears this signal and shifts into scarcity mode. It shuts down creativity. It makes you risk-averse. It makes you suspicious of others. It blinds you to opportunity because you are too busy staring at your pennies. But when you give aggressively, when you tip 30%, when you donate to a cause that hurts your wallet, when you pay your employees above market rate, you send a different signal. The signal is, I have more than enough, I am a source, I am a generator. Your brain shifts into abundance mode. You become creative. You become magnetic. People want to be around you because you are a giver, not a taker. The networking effect of generosity. Let's bring this down to the street level. Proverbs 18:16 says, "A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before the great." This is the ultimate networking hack. Most people try to take from mentors. Can I pick your brain? Can you introduce me to your investor? Can you look at my business plan? They are beggars, and kings ignore beggars. But what if you approached a mentor with a gift? What if you bought their product, reviewed it, and sent them a detailed case study of how it helped you? What if you sent them a rare book they mentioned they wanted? What if you offered to solve a problem for them for free? You're no longer a beggar, you're a benefactor. The gift makes room for you. It buys you access. Solomon used this strategy diplomatically. He sent gifts to Hiram. He sent gifts to the Queen of Sheba. He greased the wheels of international trade with generosity and the return on investment, ROI. He got back in trade deals was 1000x the cost of the gifts. I want you to look at your bank statement from last month. Is there any line item for charity? Is there any line item for gifts? Or is it all me, Netflix, DoorDash, rent? If your hand is closed so tight around your money that nothing can get out, guess what? Nothing can get in either. You're strangling your own cash flow. I challenge you to try the 10% test. Take 10% of your income, gross, not net, and give it away. Give it to your church. Solomon called this the tithe. Give it to a shelter. Give it to a struggling family member. But here is the key. Do it cheerfully. Don't do it grudgingly. If you do it while grinding your teeth, it doesn't count. Watch what happens to your psychology. Watch how your anxiety about money starts to fade. Watch how opportunities start to randomly appear. It's not magic. It's the removal of the mental block of scarcity. Solomon knew that money is like manure. If you pile it up in one spot, it stinks and attracts flies. But if you spread it around, it helps things grow. The next step. So you've diversified, secret 1. You've mastered a skill, secret 2. You've got a team, secret 3. You've killed your debt, secret 4. And now you've opened the flow of generosity, secret 5. You're becoming a force of nature. But now comes a subtle danger. You can have all the money in the world, but if you lose this next asset, you are bankrupt. This asset is invisible. It appears on no balance sheet, but it is worth more than all the gold in Fort Knox. If you lose it, no amount of money can buy it back. We are talking about Secret 6, the brand equity standard. And trust me, in the age of cancel culture, Solomon's advice on reputation is the only insurance policy you have. 6. The brand equity standard, reputation, revenue. Let's talk about the most volatile asset in your portfolio. It's not Bitcoin. It's not your Tesla stock options. It's not even the cash under your mattress. It is your name. In the modern marketplace, we have a term for this: brand equity. It's the reason you pay fun $200 for an iPhone when a $200 Android does the exact same thing. You aren't paying for the glass and the chips. You're paying for the Apple logo. You're paying for the trust, the status, and the reputation. King Solomon, the original master of branding, valued this asset above everything else in his kingdom. Proverbs 22:1. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favour is better than silver or gold. Now pause. Look at the hierarchy. Solomon places a good name above great riches. Why? Because he knew a fundamental economic truth. Riches can be stolen, but a name must be surrendered. If you have money but a bad reputation, you are a target. You are a scammer. You are a grifter. The market will eventually correct you, and when it does, it will be violent. But if you have a good reputation and zero money, you can get a loan. You can get a partner. You can get a second chance. Your name is a line of credit that never expires, unless you burn it. The baby split marketing campaign. Let's look at the moment Solomon's brand went viral. You know the story. 1 Kings 3. 2 women enter the court arguing over a baby. Both claim to be the mother. There is no DNA test. There are no witnesses. It's a he said she said nightmare. Solomon orders a sword. He says, cut the baby in half, give half to one, half to the other. One woman agrees, the liar. The other woman begs him to spare the child and give it to the rival, the mother. Solomon instantly identifies the real mother and gives her the baby. Now, most people read this as a story about wisdom. I want you to read it as a global marketing event. Look at the very next verse, 1 Kings 3:28. And all Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king. This story didn't just stay in the courtroom. It went viral. It travelled the trade routes. Merchants from Egypt, ambassadors from Babylon, and traders from Tyre heard about this young king in Jerusalem who had supernatural insight. This built trust. And in business, trust reduces transaction costs. Because the world trusted Solomon's judgment, they felt safe bringing their capital to Jerusalem. They knew they wouldn't be scammed. They knew the courts were fair. They knew contracts would be honoured. Foreign direct investment, FDI, poured into Israel, not just because the taxes were organised, but because the brand was impeccable. The modern cancel culture warning. Solomon warns us in Ecclesiastes 10:1. Dead flies make the perfumer's ointment give off a stench, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honour. This is the most brutal description of cancel culture ever written. Imagine a beautiful, expensive bottle of Chanel No. 5. It smells divine. It's worth hundreds of dollars. Now imagine you drop one single dead fly into it. Do you have mostly good perfume? No. You have garbage. The entire bottle is ruined. Solomon says your reputation is like that perfume. You can spend 20 years building a business. You can feed the poor. You can go to church. You can be a pillar of the community. But one dead fly, one embezzlement scandal, one racist tweet, one affair, one fraudulent contract, and the stench overpowers decades of wisdom. Warren Buffett, the modern Solomon of Omaha, paraphrased this perfectly. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. Many of you are trying to take shortcuts because you think no one is watching. You cheat on your taxes because the government steals anyway. You lie on your resume because everyone exaggerates. You sell a product you know is defective because buyer beware. You're picking up pennies in exchange for your gold. You're trading your good name, infinite value, for a quick buck, finite value. In the long run, the market acts as a weighing machine. If you lack integrity, you will eventually be weighed and found wanting. But if you're known as the person who 1. Delivers on time every time. 2. Admits mistakes immediately and fixes them. 3. Honors a handshake deal even when it hurts you financially. Then you become untouchable. You become the safe haven in a chaotic market. When the economy crashes, people fly to quality. If your character is high quality, the money will find you. Solomon ends the verse by saying, "Favor is better than silver or gold. Favor is the X factor. It's when people like you. It's when doors open for you that are locked for everyone else. You can't buy favor. You earn it through consistency, humility, and honesty. Silver and gold can buy you a house. Favor can get you into the room where the laws that govern the housing market are written. Always choose the room over the house. So, you have the reputation. You are trusted. The money is flowing in because people love doing business with you. But there is a problem. You are still trading your time for that money. You are working 12, 14, 16 hours a day to maintain that reputation. You are exhausted. Solomon looked at nature and found a tiny creature that had solved the problem of passive income millions of years ago. If you want to stop grinding and start living, you need to learn how to build a machine that works while you sleep. You need to learn the secret of the ant. 7. The automated revenue engine, the ant philosophy. If you're trading your time for money, you are technically losing the game. I don't care if you make $500 an hour. If you have to be there to make the $500, you're not wealthy. You're just a high-paid servant to the clock. King Solomon, a man who managed an empire that stretched from the Euphrates to the border of Egypt, knew that he couldn't personally oversee every transaction. He needed systems that ran on autopilot. To explain this, he didn't point to a general or a priest. He pointed to the dirt. Proverbs 6:6-8. Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. This is the earliest known documentation of passive income and business automation. Let's decode the ant algorithm, the no overseer protocol. The most important part of that verse is the middle, without having any chief officer or ruler. The ant doesn't have a middle manager screaming at it. It doesn't have a CEO holding a Zoom meeting to discuss synergy. It doesn't need a performance review. The ant works because the system is encoded in its DNA. Most entrepreneurs today have built businesses that require them to be the chief, officer, and ruler. If you get sick, the business stops. If you go on vacation, the revenue drops. If you die, your family inherits a mess, not an asset. Solomon is telling you to build a machine that functions without your direct supervision. In 950 BC, Solomon operationalized this by building store cities, 1 Kings 9:19. These were automated logistical hubs, Hazor, Megiddo, Giza. He didn't have to personally inspect every grain shipment. The cities were designed as systems to collect, store, and distribute wealth automatically. He built the infrastructure once, and it paid him dividends for 40 years. In 2025, the Store City is a digital product. It is a SaaS, software as a service company. It is a vending machine route. It is a dividend stock portfolio. It is code or capital that works 24/7, 365 without a coffee break. The summer-winter cycle, economic forecasting. The second part of the ant's wisdom is timing. She prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. Why? Because the ant knows winter is coming. Most people live in eternal summer. The stock market is up. It'll go up forever. Housing is booming. Buy 3 houses. Crypto is mooning. We're all going to make it. They spend everything they make in the summer, the boom cycle. Then, when winter, the recession hits, they starve. They are the sluggard. Note, in Hebrew, the word for sluggard, atzel, doesn't just mean lazy. It implies someone who fails to take advantage of the season. It implies a lack of foresight. The ant operates on a counter-cyclical strategy. In summer, the boom. The ant works maniacally. It doesn't consume, it stores. It stacks cash. It builds reserves. It ignores the parties. In winter, the bust. When everyone else is starving and panic selling, the ant is eating from the stockpile. The ant is comfortable. Solomon applied this macroeconomically. He taxed the people and stored grain and gold during the years of peace. When famine hit the surrounding nations, they didn't have food. Solomon did. So what happened? They came to Solomon to buy grain. He bought their loyalty, their land, and their labor in exchange for the surplus he saved during the summer. I want you to look at your income right now. What percentage of it requires your physical presence? 100%, you're in the danger zone. 50%, you're getting warmer. 0%, you're a king. If you want to move from laborer to owner, you need to decouple your income from your effort. This is the difference between a hunter and a farmer. A hunter, the lion, has to kill every day to eat. If he breaks a leg, he starves. A farmer, the ant, plants seeds. The seeds grow while the farmer sleeps. The farmer works hard during planting and harvest, but the growth is automated by nature. Steps to antify your life. 1. Document everything, SOPs. You cannot automate what you haven't defined. If you run a business, record yourself doing the task, write it down. Create a standard operating procedure. Now you can hand that document to someone else, or an AI, and the task gets done without you. That is the no overseer principle. 2. Build digital real estate. Write a book, create a course, record a YouTube video like this one. These are assets that exist on the internet forever. You do the work once in the summer, and people watch, yes, buy it for years in the winter. 3. The Freedom Fund. Stop spending your summer harvest on jet skis. Take that surplus cash and buy assets that pay you. If your monthly expenses are $5,000, your goal is to accumulate enough assets to generate $5,000 in passive cash flow. Once you hit that number, you are financially free. You have successfully built the colony. Solomon mocks the sluggard in Proverbs 6:9. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? He warns that poverty will come upon him like a robber and want like an armed man. Why a robber? Because it's sudden, it's violent, it takes you by surprise. If you don't have automated systems and reserves, the next recession will rob you. It will kick down your door like an armed man. The ant doesn't fear the winter, the ant prepared for it. Okay, so you've built the systems, you have the assets, you're ready to sell your product or buy a new company to expand your empire. Now you are entering the shark tank. You're sitting across the table from a buyer or a seller. They are smiling at you, they are shaking your hand, but they are using a psychological trick on you that Solomon identified 3,000 years ago. It's a trick designed to make you feel like your product is worthless so they can steal it from you. If you don't know this trick, you're going to get fleeced. It's called the "it is naught" strategy, and once you see it, you will never look at a negotiation the same way again. 8. The "it is naught" negotiation strategy, the psychology of the lowball. Welcome to the shark tank. You have built the product, you have established the brand, you're ready to sell, or maybe you're sitting in HR asking for a raise. You know your value. You know you're worth $150,000. You know your business is worth $5 million. But the person across the table looks at you with a face of pure disappointment. They sigh. They point out every flaw. They tell you that the market is soft, that your skills are common, and that your asking price is delusional. You start to sweat. You doubt yourself. You think, maybe I am asking too much. Maybe I am lucky to get anything at all. So, you lower your price. You fold. Congratulations. You just fell for the oldest psychological trick in the book. King Solomon encoded this specific manipulation tactic in Proverbs 20:14. It is naught, saith the buyer, but when he has gone his way, then he boasteth. In the King James Version, naught means nothing, worthless, garbage. In the original Hebrew, the word is ra, repeated twice for emphasis. Ra ra. It's bad. It's bad. Solomon is exposing the theatre of negotiation. The buyer must devalue the asset in your eyes to acquire it at a discount. It is a performance. And the tragedy is, most honest people believe the performance is real. The historical case study, the cities of Kabul. We actually see this dynamic play out between Solomon and his business partner, King Hiram of Tyre, in 1 Kings 10:14. Solomon and Hiram had a 20-year business relationship. Hiram supplied the cedar and the gold for the temple. When the project was finished, it was time to settle the bill. Solomon gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee as payment. Now, watch what happens. Hiram goes to inspect the cities. He looks at them and says, "What kind of cities are these that you have given me, my brother?" He calls them the land of Kabul, which sounds like the Hebrew word for good for nothing, or sterile. He is pulling a Proverbs 20:14 on Solomon. He's saying, "These cities are trash, Solomon. You ripped me off." But look at the balance sheet. Did Hiram return the cities? No. Did he break the alliance? No. In fact, the trade continued. Hiram was posturing. He was devaluing the asset to ensure he maintained leverage in the relationship for the next deal. It was a power play between two titans. The psychology of the flinch. Why does this work so well? It exploits a cognitive bias known as imposter syndrome combined with social validation. We are social creatures. We look to others to tell us what we are worth. If I am buying your house and I walk in and say, "Wow, beautiful crown molding, amazing floors, I love this place. I've just transferred all the power to you. You now know I want it. You will raise the price." But if I walk in and say, the roof looks old, the HVAC is loud, the neighborhood is kind of transitioning, I am attacking your confidence. I am anchoring the value low. If you aren't sophisticated, you will internalize my criticism. You will think, "Oh no, the house is bad," and you will accept my lowball offer just to get rid of it. Then, the moment the papers are signed, what do? I go to the bar with my friends and say, as Solomon predicted, "You guys won't believe the steal I just got. This guy had no idea what he was sitting on." Then he boasteth. Modern application, the salary negotiation. Let's apply this to your job. You walk into your annual review. You've crushed your KPIs. You want a 20k reward. Your boss, the buyer, leans back. He sighs. He looks at a spreadsheet you can't see. "Listen, John, you've done okay, but the market is tough right now. The budget is frozen, and honestly, there were a few hiccups with the Q3 project." He is saying, it is naught. He is trying to make you feel lucky just to have a job. If you believe him, you say, "Okay, thanks for the feedback," and you take a 2% cost of living adjustment. Meanwhile, the company is posting record profits, and your boss gets a bonus for keeping payroll costs down. How to counter the "it is naught" strategy? Solomon didn't just diagnose the disease, his life gives us the cure. You counter this strategy with objective truth and the takeaway. 1. The anchor of truth, due diligence. You cannot be emotionally manipulated if you have data. If you are selling a car and the buyer says, "The tyres are shot, I'll give you $5,000, but you know the Blue Book value is $8,000, and you have a receipt for new tyres, his words have no power. You simply smile and say, "I understand that's how you feel, but the data says the market value is $8,000. If that doesn't work for you, no problem." 2. The takeaway, the walkaway. The only way to prove the buyer is lying is to threaten to remove the asset. When the buyer says, "It is naught, it's garbage," you say, "You know what? You're right. I shouldn't burden you with such a terrible product. I'll just sell it to someone else. Thanks for coming by." Watch how fast their attitude changes. Whoa, let's not be hasty. I mean, it has potential. Suddenly the garbage becomes gold again. Why? Because you called their bluff. Solomon negotiated from a position of abundance. He had other trade partners, he had the Egyptians, he had the Hittites. If Hiram didn't want the deal, Solomon could go elsewhere. If you have no options, you have no leverage. The challenge, the Craigslist experiment. I want you to practice this. Go on Facebook, Marketplace or Craigslist. Find something you want to buy. When you meet the seller, don't be rude, but find a flaw, point it out. "Hey, nice bike, but the chain is a little rusted and the seat is worn. I'll have to replace those." Make an offer 20% below asking. Watch their reaction. Watch them validate your criticism. Watch them lower the price. Then realize that everyone is doing this to you. Your boss, your clients, the real estate agent, even the colleges you apply to. They are all playing a game. The game is devalue the asset. Your job is to hold the frame. Your job is to know that when they say it is naught, it actually translates to, I want this and I'm terrified I have to pay full price for it. The spiritual warning. There is a deeper layer here. Solomon warns about the character of the person who does this. Then he boasteth. This reveals that the buyer knows the truth. They are consciously manipulating. In your own dealings, be careful. There is a line between negotiation and lying. Solomon says in Proverbs 11:1, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. You can negotiate hard, you can point out flaws, but if you lie about the value to exploit someone who is desperate or ignorant, you are crossing a line into theft. And as we learned in secret number 6, your reputation is worth more than the discount you just swindled. Now, negotiation is tough, business is war, but the most dangerous deal you will ever make isn't with a vendor, a boss, or a customer. It is the contract you sign with the person you wake up next to every single morning, or the person you give 50% of your equity to in an LLC. King Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. You might think, wow, he's the expert on romance. Actually, he's the expert on how a bad partnership can destroy a $1 trillion empire from the inside out. If you choose the wrong partner, secrets 1 through 8 don't matter. They will take half and burn the rest. Let's talk about the $1 billion partnership decision. 9. The $1 billion partnership decision, the Solomon paradox. Let's talk about the single most important financial decision you will ever make. It is not which stock you buy. It is not which degree you get. It is not even which business you start. It is who you marry. If you are a business owner, this applies to your co-founder. If you're single, this applies to your future spouse. We treat love like a Disney movie, where feelings guide us and love conquers all. King Solomon treats relationships like a merger and acquisition, M&A, and he warns that if you merge with a toxic asset, it will liquidate your empire faster than any market crash ever could. The Solomon paradox, the wisest man's biggest failure. Solomon is a walking contradiction here. He wrote the manual on the perfect partner, Proverbs 31. But he lived the nightmare of the worst strategy, 1 Kings 11. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Now, get your mind out of the gutter. This wasn't just about lust. This was geopolitics. In the ancient world, you didn't sign treaties with ink. You signed them with marriage. He married the daughter of Pharaoh to secure the southern border. He married Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, and Sidonians to secure trade routes. He thought he was diversifying his political portfolio. But 1 Kings 11:4 delivers the fatal blow. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God. These partners brought their own culture, their own values, and their own gods into the corporation. They diluted the mission. They siphoned off resources to build shrines to foreign idols. They fragmented his focus. Solomon, the Trillionaire, ended his life as a conflicted, cynical, and compromised man because he brought the wrong board members into his company. The asset class partner, the Proverbs 31 executive. So what does the right partner look like? Christians often quote Proverbs 31 at weddings to describe a good wife. They picture a woman who knits quietly and cooks dinner. That is a complete misreading of the text. If you actually read Proverbs 31, this woman is a shark. She is a venture capitalist. She is a manufacturing mogul. She is a logistics expert. Let's look at her resume. Real estate investor. She considers a field and buys it. VR 16. She does her own due diligence and capital allocation. Passive income generator. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. VR 16. She reinvests profits into cash-flowing assets. International trade. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. VM 14. She understands global supply chains. Manufacturing. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. VR 18. She runs a textile business, linen and purple. This is not a housewife. This is a chief operating officer, COO. Solomon says in verse 11, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. The phrase no lack of gain literally means he doesn't need to worry about spoil or profit. Why? Because she is out there making money with him. They are a power couple. They are 1 + 1 = 10. the liability class partner, the roof dweller. Now let's look at the alternative. Solomon, having lived with 1,000 women, wrote extensively about the contentious woman. Proverbs 21:9. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. In ancient Israel, the roof was flat. It was exposed to the sun, the wind, and the rain. It was uncomfortable. Solomon, the guy with the ivory palace, is saying, I would rather sleep on the concrete roof in the rain than sleep in a king-size bed with a woman who drains my energy. Why? Because a toxic partner is an opportunity cost. Every minute you spend arguing about nonsense is a minute you are not building. Every ounce of emotional energy you spend placating an insecure partner is energy you are not using to conquer the market. Solomon calls this rottenness in the bones, Proverbs 12:4. It destroys your structural integrity from the inside out. The economics of divorce and bad partnerships. Let's bring this to 2025. Jeff Bezos' divorce cost him $38 billion. Bill Gates' divorce involved dividing a massive foundation. In the business world, a co-founder dispute is the sucker one reason startups fail. If you marry the wrong person, you are capping your wealth. You want to save. They want to spend. You want to take a risk to start a business. They want security and complain about the lack of a paycheck. You want to give to charity. They want a new boat. This is what the Bible calls being unequally yoked. 2 Corinthians 6:14. In farming, if you yoke an ox, strong, slow, with a donkey, fast, erratic, they will walk in circles. They will tear the field apart. In business and marriage, if your values regarding money, risk, and integrity do not align, you will go in circles until you crash. Before you put a ring on it, or before you sign the operating agreement with a business partner, you need to run a Solomon audit. 1. The crisis test. How do they react when things go wrong? Do they panic, liability, or do they problem solve, asset? Solomon's Proverbs 31 woman laughs at the time to come. Vetustus 25. She isn't anxious about the future because she is prepared. 2. The value alignment. Do they worship the same gods, metaphorically or literally? If you worship freedom and they worship status, you are enemies. You will spend your life building what they want to destroy. 3. The multiplier effect. Are you better together than apart? If you are a 10 alone and a 7 when you are with them, that is a bad trade. Run. The Grey's Anatomy fallacy. Pop culture tells you to follow your heart. Solomon tells you in Proverbs 28:26, whoever trusts in his own heart is a fool. Your heart is an idiot. Your heart wants what feels good now. Your brain, wisdom, knows what will be good for you in 20 years. Do not marry for potential. Do not marry a fixer-upper. Marry a partner who is already running at your speed. Because if you are an eagle and you marry a turkey, you don't teach the turkey to fly. You just end up walking on the ground with the turkey. Transition to emotional intelligence. Now, maybe you've made a bad choice, or maybe you are the one who is volatile. Solomon noticed that the single biggest destroyer of wealth wasn't the market, or the wife, or the enemy. It was the king's own temper. If you cannot control your own internal state, you cannot control an external empire. Solomon called a man without self-control a city broken down without walls, and in Secret Narcotes, we are going to teach you how to build those walls. This is the fortress of emotional intelligence. 10. The fortress of emotional intelligence, the city without walls. There is a reason why the casino always wins. There is a reason why retail investors almost always lose money in the stock market. It isn't because the game is rigged, though sometimes it is. It isn't because they don't have enough information. It is because they are emotional toddlers. You can have the diversification of a hedge fund, secret number 1. You can have the skills of a master craftsman, secret number 2. You can have the best advisors in the world, secret number 3. But if you cannot control your own internal state, you are not a king. You are a victim waiting to happen. King Solomon, the wisest psychologist in history, diagnosed this fatal flaw in Proverbs 25:28. A man without self-control is like a city broken down and without walls. In the ancient world, walls were everything. If a city had strong walls, the citizens could sleep at night. They could trade, build, and grow wealth because they were secure. If the walls were breached, it didn't matter how much gold was in the treasury. The enemy could walk in, take it, and burn the rest. Solomon is saying that your self-control is the wall around your wealth. If you have no self-control, your money doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the first person who can trigger your emotions. The amygdala hijack, biology versus bank account. Let's look at the biology of being broke. When you see a limited time offer or you see Bitcoin pump 20% in an hour, your brain releases dopamine. You get excited. You feel the fear of missing out, FOMO. When the market crashes and your portfolio drops 30%, your brain releases cortisol. You feel fear. You panic. In both scenarios, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, math, and long-term planning, shuts down. Your amygdala, the lizard brain responsible for fight or flight, takes over. This is called an amygdala hijack. When emotion goes up, intelligence goes down. You are literally becoming stupider in real time. Solomon knew this. He wrote in Proverbs 14:29, "Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly." The Hebrew phrase for slow to anger literally means long of nose, taking a long breath. The phrase for hasty temper means short of spirit. The three horsemen of financial destruction. If your walls are down, three enemies will invade your city and bankrupt you. 1. The enemy of FOMO, greed. Remember 2021? Remember the NFTs? Remember the meme coins? People who had no business investing were throwing their life savings into digital pictures of rocks because everyone else is getting rich. They saw the crowd running, so they ran too. Solomon warned in Proverbs 28:20, "A faithful man will abound with blessings, but whoever hastens to be rich will not go unpunished." Hastens to be rich. That is the biblical definition of get rich quick. If you chase the pump, you will be the liquidity for the exit. You're buying at the top because you have no walls to keep the greed out. 2. The enemy of panic, fear. The market corrects. The news screams recession. The man with no walls gets scared. I need to sell everything. I need to go to cash. So he sells his assets at the bottom. He locks in the loss. He violated the cardinal rule of investing, buy low, sell high, because he couldn't handle the emotional pain of seeing a red number on a screen. The man with walls, self-control, looks at the crash and says, "This is a discount," and he buys more. 3. The enemy of impression, pride. This is the most insidious one. You buy a car you can't afford because you want your neighbour to think you're successful. You pick up the tab at dinner for 10 people because you want to look like the big man. You are letting your ego dictate your spending. Solomon says in Proverbs 13:7, "One pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth." The man without walls needs external validation. The man with walls is secure in his net worth, even if he drives a Honda. So how do you rebuild the walls? Solomon gives us the blueprint in Proverbs 17:27. "A man of understanding is of a cool spirit. A cool spirit, detached, calculated, unemotional." This is the mindset of the professional investor. When Warren Buffett sees a crash, his pulse doesn't race. He eats a McDonald's burger and buys the dip. He has a cool spirit. Application. The wall-building protocol. You need to install circuit breakers in your life. These are artificial walls that force you to stop and think before the amygdala takes over. Rule number 1. The 24-hour rule. For any purchase over $100 or $1,000, depending on your income, you must wait 24 hours, put it in the cart, then close the tab, walk away. 90% of the time, the dopamine will wear off by the next morning, and you will realize you don't actually need the heated toilet seat. You just saved money by doing nothing. Rules 2. The investment constitution. Write down your rules before the crisis happens. I will buy the S&P 500 every month on the 1st, regardless of the price. I will never invest more than 5% of my net worth in speculative assets, crypto startups. I will not sell unless the fundamental thesis changes. When the market crashes, you don't have to think. You just follow the Constitution. You outsource your decision-making to your past, smarter self. Rule number 3. The anger audit. Solomon warns that anger lodges in the heart of fools, Ecclesiastes 7:9. Never make a financial decision when you are angry, hungry, lonely or tired. Halt. Did you get passed over for a promotion? Do not go home and revenge spend on a new watch to feel better. Did you lose money on a trade? Do not revenge trade to try and make it back instantly. That is how you blow up the account. The ultimate test: silence. There is one specific area where a lack of self-control will cost you millions. It's not just about spending money, it's about spending words. The man with no walls has a big mouth. He tells everyone his plans. He brags about his wins. He complains about his losses. And in doing so, he gives his enemies the ammunition they need to destroy him. Solomon's next secret is perhaps the hardest one for YouTubers, influencers and entrepreneurs to follow. It is the art of strategic silence. And if you master it, you can literally fool people into thinking you are a genius. 11. The art of strategic silence, the poker face protocol. There is an old gangster saying, "Real G's move in silence like lasagna." It's funny, but it's also one of the most profound financial strategies ever uttered. We live in the look at me economy. If you didn't post it on Instagram, did it even happen? If you didn't tweet your revenue numbers, are you even a founder? We're addicted to broadcasting. We signal our virtues, our wealth, and our plans to the entire world. King Solomon, however, operated as the world's first intelligence agency. He knew that information is leverage, and every time you open your mouth, you are leaking leverage. He drops the ultimate microphone drop verse in Proverbs 17:28. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. Think about the power of that statement. You can be an absolute idiot. You can have no idea what is going on. But if you just shut up, people will assume you are a genius. They will project wisdom onto your silence. But the moment you speak, you remove all doubt. The economics of information asymmetry. Why is silence a money secret? Because of a concept called information asymmetry. In any transaction, a salary negotiation, a real estate deal, a lawsuit, the person with more information wins. When you talk, you give away information. When you listen, you gather information. If you tell a car salesman, "I really need a car by Monday because my new job starts," you just cost yourself $2,000. You revealed your deadline. You revealed your desperation. He now knows he can squeeze you because you have no time to walk away. If you had stayed silent, looked at the car and said nothing, he would have started talking. He would have revealed his desperation to hit his monthly quota. Solomon warns in Proverbs 13:3, "Whoever guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin." The Hezekiah error, the cost of flexing. There is a terrifying story in the Bible that proves the high cost of flashing your cash. It involves one of Solomon's descendants, King Hezekiah. In 2 Kings 20, Hezekiah gets sick and recovers. To celebrate, ambassadors from Babylon come to visit him. Hezekiah feels good. He wants to impress these guys. He wants to show them that he is a big deal. So what does he do? He opens the treasury. He shows them the silver, the gold, the spices, the armor, everything. The text says, there was nothing in his house or in all his realm that Hezekiah did not show them. He thought he was flexing. But the Babylonians weren't impressed. They were taking notes. They were casing the joint. They went back to Babylon and said, "Hey, Jerusalem is full of gold, and we know exactly where the vault is." Years later, Babylon returned with an army. They didn't guess where the money was. They knew. They stripped the temple, burned the city, and took everything Hezekiah had shown them. Are you pulling a Hezekiah? Are you posting pictures of your boarding pass so people know you're traveling? Burglars love this. Are you telling your co-workers about your side hustle? Jealous people love to sabotage this. Are you telling your family exactly how much you make? Suddenly, everyone has an emergency and needs a loan. In the modern world, privacy is the ultimate luxury. The truly wealthy, the old money, are invisible. They don't have logos on their clothes. They drive nondescript SUVs. They live in houses set back from the road behind trees. They practice stealth wealth. They know that if you look rich, you attract liabilities, lawsuits, scammers, thieves. If you look average, you're left alone to compound your money in peace. The dopamine trap of announcing. There is also a neurological reason to stay silent about your goals. Solomon says, "In all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty." Proverbs 14:23. Modern psychology backs this up. When you tell someone, "I'm going to start a business," or "I'm going to lose 20 pounds," your brain releases a hit of dopamine. You get the reward before you do the work. Your brain feels like it already achieved the goal just by announcing it. This kills your motivation. You lose the hunger. But if you keep it a secret, if you don't tell a soul, the pressure builds inside you. The only way to release that pressure is to actually do the work. Build in the dark. Let the results make the noise. The boardroom strategy. The power of the pause. I want you to try a tactical experiment this week. The next time you're in a negotiation or a serious conversation and the other person finishes speaking, wait. Don't answer immediately. Look them in the eye and count to 4 in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4. It will feel excruciatingly awkward. The silence will feel heavy. But watch what happens. The other person will start talking again. They will get nervous. They will start bidding against themselves. They will reveal a secret. Well, we could probably do $500 less if that helps. You just made money by breathing. Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 10:3, "Even when the fool walks on the road, he lacks sense, and he says to everyone that he is a fool." Don't be the person who has an opinion on everything. Crypto crashes? You have a hot take. Politics? You have a rant. A celebrity breaks up? You have a theory. You're broadcasting your lack of focus. The king sits on the throne and listens. The jester runs around the court screaming, "Be the king." Now let's assume you've done it all. You have the money, the systems, the partner, the emotional control, and the privacy. You are winning the game of life. But there is one final boss you haven't defeated yet. Time. You are going to die. And if you don't have a plan for what happens to your money after you die, you didn't build wealth. You just leased it. Most people leave an inheritance to their children. That is a mistake. Solomon says you need to think bigger. You need to think about the children who haven't even been born yet. Let's talk about secret number 12, the grandchildren's inheritance model. 12. The grandchildren's inheritance model, the dynasty defense. There is a statistic that should terrify you. 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation. 90% lose it by the third. We call this the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves phenomenon. The grandfather builds the empire in his work clothes, shirt sleeves. The son wears a suit and maintains it. The grandson wears designer clothes, has never worked a day in his life, blows the money, and ends up back in shirt sleeves. If you are working 80 hours a week to build wealth, and you don't have a plan to stop this cycle, you're wasting your time. You are just a temporary bank account for your future ungrateful descendants. King Solomon, who was obsessed with legacy, gave us the formula to break this curse in Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Notice the specificity, not just children, children's children. Solomon is telling you to skip a generation in your planning. If you plan for your kids, you are planning for survival. If you plan for your grandkids, you are planning for dynasty, the Vanderbilt versus Rockefeller case study. Let's look at 2 American kings. Cornelius Vanderbilt was the richest man in America. He built the railroads. When he died, he left the majority of his money to his son, William. He just handed over the cash. Within 50 years, the Vanderbilt fortune was gone. At the first Vanderbilt family reunion in 1973, there wasn't a single millionaire among the 120 descendants. They bought mansions through parties and consumed the capital. John D. Rockefeller read his Bible. He understood Solomon's rule. He didn't just leave money, he left a system. He created a web of trusts. The trust didn't say, "Here is $10 million, have fun." It said, "Here is a fund. If you want money for college, we pay. If you want money to start a business, we invest. But you cannot touch the principal." Today there are over 170 Rockefeller heirs, and they are still wealthy. They are still powerful. Because Rockefeller didn't leave them money, he left them rules, the difference between a will and a trust. Most of you have a will, or nothing at all. A will is a death document. It says, "I am dead. Here is my stuff. Good luck." It is a one-time transfer of assets. A trust is a living document. It is a transfer of values. Solomon's grandchildren model requires you to govern from the grave. You can set conditions. You get a payout only if you graduate university. The trust matches your earned income 1-to-1. This incentivizes work. Money can only be used for healthcare, education, or buying a house. This protects your money from your children, because let's be honest, if you give an 18-year-old $1 million, you are not blessing him. You are destroying him. You are robbing him of the hunger he needs to build his own character. Ecclesiastes 2, the horror of the foolish heir. Solomon actually had a panic attack about this. In Ecclesiastes 2:18-19, he writes, "I hated all my toil in which I had toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. Solomon knew that you can be the smartest man on earth, but if your son is an idiot, and remember Rehoboam, he was an idiot, the empire falls. You don't need to be a billionaire to do this. You can start the grandchildren model with a $50,000 life insurance policy. 1. The education fund. Instead of buying your kid a car, put that money into a 529 plan or a custodial account that compounds until they are 25. 2. The family bank. Concept. Don't just give your kids money, lend it to them. If they want to buy a house, you are the mortgage lender. They pay you interest. The interest goes back into the family pot to help the next generation. This teaches them responsibility and keeps the wealth within the family circle. 3. The ethical will. Write a document that has no legal standing but infinite moral weight. Write down your stories, your failures, your principles. If you leave them your money but not your wisdom, the money will destroy them. If you leave them your wisdom, they can make their own money. And that brings us to the fuel of the entire engine. We have talked about gold, silver, ships, and real estate. But Solomon said that all of those things are just byproducts. They are the exhaust fumes of the engine. The engine itself is something else entirely. And if you prioritize the gold over the engine, you lose both. Solomon made one specific purchase early in his career that generated an infinite ROI. Secret not just 13 is the wisdom acquisition priority. 13. The wisdom acquisition priority, the Golden Goose Protocol. Let's look at your credit card statement again. I can tell your future just by looking at your transaction history for the last 30 days. $200 for sneakers, $80 for a bar tab, $15 for Netflix, $0 for books, $0 for courses, $0 for coaching. If this is you, you are eating the seeds instead of planting them. You're obsessed with the golden egg, the money, the stuff, the status, but you're starving the golden goose, your brain. King Solomon was the wealthiest man in history, but he didn't start that way. He started with a choice. In 1 Kings 3, God appears to Solomon in a dream at Gibeon and writes him a blank check. Ask what I shall give you. Imagine the pressure. He could have asked for the death of his enemies, safety, long life, health, riches, wealth. Solomon asked for none of them. He asked for an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. He asked for the software, not the hardware. And because he chose the software, wisdom, God gave him the hardware, riches and honor as a bonus. 1 Kings 3:13. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no other king shall compare with you all your days. The ROI of instruction. Solomon codified this strategy in Proverbs 4:7. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting get understanding. The phrase, with all thy getting, implies a transaction. It implies cost. Solomon is saying, spend whatever you have to spend, liquidate your assets if you have to, but do not leave the market without wisdom. Why? Because wisdom is the only asset with an infinite ROI. If you give a fool $1 million, he will lose it in a year. We see this with lottery winners. If you take $1 million away from a wise man, he will make it back in a year. The money is not in the bank account. The money is in the competence. In Proverbs 23:23, Solomon gives a direct investment command. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Note the verb, buy. Wisdom is not free. Sure, you can get information for free. You can watch YouTube videos like this one, or read Wikipedia. But transformation usually comes with a price tag. You pay for the course to save time. You pay the consultant to avoid a $100,000 mistake. You pay the mentor to access his network. When you pay attention. If I gave you a free book on how to become a millionaire, you would put it on your shelf and never read it. If I charged you $5,000 for a seminar on how to become a millionaire, you would show up early, sit in the front row and take furious notes. Solomon knew that financial commitment triggers psychological commitment. Let's look at the Queen of Sheba again, 1 Kings 10. She didn't just come to look at Solomon, she came to test him. She came to download his operating system, and she didn't come empty-handed. She brought 120 talents of gold, spices, and precious stones. She paid a massive tuition fee to sit at Solomon's feet. Was it worth it? She went back to Sheba, modern-day Ethiopia, Yemen, and applied what she learned. Historical traditions suggest her kingdom exploded in wealth and influence subsequently. She treated wisdom as an import commodity. She traded gold, a finite resource, for wisdom, a generative resource. She won the trade. You think education is expensive? Try ignorance. Ignorance is buying a house with a bad foundation because you didn't pay for an inspection. $500 saved versus $50,000 cost. Ignorance is trading crypto without understanding leverage because you didn't buy a course. $200 saved versus life savings lost. Ignorance is staying in a dead-end job for 10 years because you didn't pay for a certification. $2,000 saved versus $500,000 in lost potential earnings. Every time you say, "I can't afford to learn," you're actually paying the ignorance tax, and the ignorance tax is always higher than the tuition fee. Solomon does the math for us in Proverbs 16:16. How much better to get wisdom than gold? To get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. Let's analyze this like a portfolio manager. Gold, silver, store of value, hedge against inflation, can be stolen, can be lost, static. Wisdom, active value, solves problems, creates new income streams, cannot be stolen, it's in your head. Portable, dynamic. If you are shipwrecked on an island, your gold is useless, it's just heavy metal. But your wisdom, your ability to build a shelter, find water and navigate the stars, that is valuable. Solomon is telling you to invest in the asset that works in every market condition. The action plan, the 3% rule. Here is your homework. Take your annual income. Let's say you make $50,000. Calculate 3%. That is $500. That is your mandatory learning budget for the year. You're not allowed to save this money. You must spend it on books, audio or physical, seminars as conferences, networking plus knowledge, coaching courses, specific skill acquisition. If you make $100,000, your budget is $3,000. This is the R&D, research and development budget for you Inc. Apple spends billions on R&D. Amazon spends billions on R&D. If you spend $0 on R&D, your product, you, becomes obsolete. Okay, so you have the wisdom. You know what to do, you have the blueprint, but knowledge without action is just trivia. At some point, you have to take the chips off the table and put them in the pot. You have to take a risk, and not just any risk. Solomon suggests a risk that looks absolutely insane to the average person. He tells you to throw your money into the ocean, literally. This is secret norma 14, the bread on waters strategy. 14, the bread on waters strategy, the asymmetric bet. This is the secret that separates the billionaires from the millionaires. Millionaires calculate risk. Billionaires calculate asymmetry. If I told you to take your hard-earned money, the money you sweated for, the money you saved, and throw it into the ocean, you would have me committed to a mental institution. It sounds like the definition of insanity. It sounds like waste. But King Solomon, the man who built the temple effectively for cash, tells you to do exactly that in Ecclesiastes 11:1. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Let's decode the metaphor. Bread is your sustenance. It is your capital. It is something valuable that keeps you alive today. Waters represents the unknown, the chaotic, the international markets where you have no control. Cast implies a deliberate action. You aren't losing it, you are releasing it. Solomon is teaching the philosophy of the moonshot. He is talking about making investments where the probability of success might be unclear, but the payout, if it hits, is astronomical. The 1 Kings 10:22 business model. To understand this, we have to look at Solomon's shipping logs. 1 Kings 10:22. For the king had a fleet of ships of Tarshish at sea with the fleet of Hiram. Once every 3 years the fleet of ships of Tarshish used to come bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes and peacocks. Focus on the timeline. Once every 3 years. Imagine the psychology of that investment. Solomon pays for the ships, he pays the crew, he loads them with supplies. That is the bread. Then the ships leave. They disappear over the horizon. Year 1 passes, nothing, no revenue, just cost. Year 2 passes, still nothing. Rumours of storms, rumours of pirates. The prudent accountants are sweating. They are saying, "King, we just threw that money away, it's gone." Year 3 arrives. Suddenly the sails appear, and when they dock, they don't just bring back the cost of the bread. They bring back gold, ivory and exotic goods. The ROI, return on investment is not 10%, it is 10,000%. In modern venture capital, we call this the J-curve. When you start a massive venture, your bank account goes down first. You are casting bread. You are burning cash. Jeff Bezos cast bread for 20 years. Amazon was not profitable for decades. Wall Street mocked him. He kept casting. Now Amazon runs the world. YouTube creators cast bread. You make 50 videos, 0 views. You spend money on a camera. You spend time editing. You are throwing your effort into the digital ocean. Then, after many days or years, the algorithm catches. One video pops. The ad revenue turns on. The sponsorship deals come in. Most people quit in year 2. They stand on the dock, look at the empty horizon and say, "It didn't work, I'm going back to my 9 to 5. They want the microwave dinner, instant gratification. Solomon played the slow cooker game, delayed gratification. Nassim Taleb, a modern economist, talks about anti-fragility and asymmetric bets. An asymmetric bet is one where 1. Downside is capped. The most you can lose is the bread, the money you invested. You can't lose more than you put in. 2. Upside is unlimited. The return can be 100x, 1000x or infinite. Solomon knew that if the ship sank he lost some wood and some grain, he would survive. Because he had his 7 streams, remember secret number 1? But if the ships returned, the upside changed the GDP of the entire nation. Reality check. Are you playing it too safe? Many of you are playing not to lose instead of playing to win. You keep all your money in a savings account earning 0.01%. That is not casting bread. That is letting the bread go stale in the pantry. Inflation is the mold eating your bread. To apply secret number 14, you need a moonshot fund. This is money you can afford to lose, maybe 5 to 10% of your net worth. And you throw it at high-risk, high-reward vehicles, angel investing, putting $1,000 into a startup friend's business. Most will fail. One might be Uber, content creation, starting a brand that might not pay you for 2 years, crypto speculative assets, with caution and only with a moonshot fund. R&D, trying a new product line in your business that might flop, the many days warning. The catch is the phrase after many days. We live in a TikTok generation. We want the payout in 15 seconds. Solomon says you need the stomach for the wait. Can you write the book for a year with no publisher? Can you build the app for 18 months with no users? Can you hold the stock through a 50% drawdown? If you pull your bread out of the water too early, you just get wet bread. You have to let it float. You have to trust the current, the spiritual law of detachment. There is a deep spiritual lesson here. Casting the bread requires detachment. Once it leaves your hand, you cannot control it. You have to trust God, the universe, or the market. This breaks the spirit of micromanagement. The poor man holds his money tight. He suffocates it. The rich man throws it. He circulates it. And because he is willing to let it go, it comes back to him multiplied. We have covered 14 secrets. You have diversified. You have skilled up. You have a team. You killed debt. You gave. You built a brand. You automated. You negotiated. You partnered. You controlled your emotions. You stayed silent. You planned for grandkids. You bought wisdom. And you took the big risk. You are now, by all definitions, rich. You have the money. You have the empire. But here is the twist ending. Solomon had all of this. He had the gold, the girls, the glory. And yet, at the end of his life, he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, which opens with, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." He realized that there is one specific type of poverty that attacks only the rich. It is a curse that turns billionaires into miserable insomniacs. And if you don't learn the final secret, you will spend your life building a golden cage that you can never escape. Let's finish this with secret Tanyasa 15, the sleep of the laborer. 15. The sleep of the laborer, the ultimate metric of success. We have spent this entire video talking about how to get rich, but we need to end with a warning about what happens when you actually get there. There is a curse that comes with the crown. King Solomon, the man who had everything, admitted that he lost the one thing that money can't buy: peace. Ecclesiastes 5:12 is the most haunting verse in his financial diary. The sleep of a labouring man is sweet, whether he eat little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not suffer him to sleep. Read that again. Will not suffer him to sleep. The Hebrew phrasing implies that his wealth is actively tormenting him. It is shaking him awake. the paradox of the $100,000 mattress. Here is the irony of modern success. You spend your first 40 years grinding to buy a $10 million house with a master suite that looks like a generic 5-star hotel. You buy a Heston's mattress made of horsehair and clouds. You install blackout curtains and a HEPA air filter. And then you lie there staring at the ceiling. Why? Because the labourer, the employee, the simple man, has only one worry. How do I pay the bills this week? Once he pays them, his brain turns off. He is physically exhausted. He sleeps. The rich man, you hopefully, has 1,000 worries. Did the merger go through? Is my manager stealing from me? Is the lawsuit going to settle? Is the stock market crashing in Tokyo right now? Are my kids only loving me for my inheritance? Your assets become your captors. Every rental property is a potential lawsuit. Every employee is a potential leak. Every dollar is a target for the IRS. Solomon calls this vexation of spirit. It is the mental tax you pay for being the king, the paranoia premium. Solomon faced this daily. In Song of Solomon 3:78, we see that around his bed stood 60 valiant men, all holding swords, being expert in war. Every man hath his sword upon his thigh because of fear in the night. Imagine living like that. Imagine being so rich that you need 60 Navy SEALs standing around your bed just so you can close your eyes. That isn't freedom. That is a high-security prison where you are both the warden and the inmate. In 2025, the 60 valiant men are your lawyers, your cybersecurity team, and your PR crisis managers. If you build an empire that requires you to be paranoid 24/7, you haven't won the game. You've lost it. The application, the enough number. So, is the solution to be poor? Absolutely not. Poverty is its own nightmare. Proverbs 10:15. The solution is to define your enough. The reason the rich man can't sleep is often because he is chasing more with no finish line. Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 5:10, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity." It is the hedonic treadmill. You get the million. You want 5, you get 5. You want the jet, you get the jet. You want the island. The hunger never stops unless you stop it. To beat the curse of insomnia, you need to set a cap. Once I hit $5 million in net worth, I am done chasing. I will switch to maintenance mode. I will not check my email after 6 p.m, even if the building is burning down. I will build systems, secret number 7, that isolate me from the daily problems. The eat well versus sleep well test. In finance, there is a classic trade-off known as the eat well versus sleep well test. You can invest in high-risk crypto and leverage. You might make millions and eat well as caviar steak, but you will check the charts at 4 a.m. You will not sleep well. You can invest in boring index funds and government bonds. You will eat simple food, chicken, rice, but you will sleep like a baby because you know your money is safe. Solomon tried the eat well path. He had the gold, the peacocks, the parties, and at the end of his life he looked back and said, it was chasing after the wind. Real wealth is the ability to turn your phone off for a week and know that your world won't collapse. Real wealth is a clear conscience. Real wealth is sweet sleep. If you're making $1 million a year but you're popping Xanax to survive the stress, you are broke. Don't let the abundance of your riches keep you awake. We have just downloaded the operating system of the richest man who ever walked the earth. We've gone from the mud of the foundation to the gold of the crown. We covered the rule of 7 to protect you from disaster. We learned the art of silence to protect your leverage. We learned about the ant to automate your freedom. We learned about risk by casting bread on the waters. And we learned about peace, the only asset that actually matters in the end. King Solomon finished his life with a conclusion that confuses most economists. After counting his trillions, after building the temples, after dating the supermodels, he summarized the entire human experience in one sentence. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Why? Because Solomon realized that money makes a magnificent servant, but a terrible master. If you serve money, you will never have enough. You will die tired, paranoid, and alone, guarding a pile of gold that you can't take with you. But if money serves you, and you serve a higher purpose, then you become dangerous. You become a force for good. You become a dynasty builder. You now have the secrets. The question is, do you have the courage to execute them? Most people will click off this video and go back to watching cat memes. They will stay obscure men. But a few of you, the the remnant, the WealthOga tribe, you will take these 15 keys and you will unlock doors that have been shut for generations. Which secret hit you the hardest? Was it the "it is naught" negotiation trick? Was it the warning about the wrong partner? Or was it the sleep of the labourer? Let me know in the comments below. I read them. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to learn the specific bread on waters investments I'm looking at for 2026, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. We are just getting started. This is WealthOga. Build the wealth, keep the faith, sleep well. I'll see you in the next one.